Good morning. It is 8:51 a.m. on Sunday, February 6th, 2022. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just recorded this video already, only without sound. This is 5 more minutes. So, this one has sound, hopefully. But it just goes to show technical difficulties. We had to cancel last night's role-playing game for technical difficulties, and it's frustrating. I wish that I could wave a magic wand and make all technology work perfectly. Probably a lot of people would thank me for that, but unfortunately, I don't have that magic wand. In any case, it feels weirdly like I could just re-talk about the things that I did, talked about already, except that it's all non-organic now. But what are you going to do? Sometimes that's just what you have to do. You have to roll with those punches. One of the things that I talked about was that I had sort of a full day yesterday, so that I finally did like an actual significant exercise workout yesterday after sort of putting it off for a whole week, and so I'm kind of pretty stiff and sore today, but in kind of that good way that just you're sort of constantly wanting to stretch and that sort of thing. Probably that's not great audio when I turn away from the microphone, but one of the other things that I talked about in the video was we had our most recent session for musical improv, and but next week should be our first in-person one, and that's where I was excited to do that, partly just because one of the things that, like Zoom calls it's an amazing tool that allows us to do all sorts of things remotely that we used to not be able to do. But one of the things that is still virtually impossible to do over Zoom call is to sing together. It's just very hard. Just because everyone's out of sync with one another. But I get, so it feels weird because like I'm sort of just like trying to remember, like, well, this is what I talked about before. It doesn't feel like it flows as naturally from one subject to another. But again, sometimes that's what you just got to do. The other piece of what I was talking about with the improv is that, and because I was thinking about it yesterday, is how part of what fascinates me about it is that it's a little bit scary, kind of every time. Because as someone who often in my life doesn't want to try things until I'm sure it'll be good or I'm sure it'll work, I think that actually I wonder how true that is, because I kind of say that and it feels that way, but then I just think how I do a lot of stuff that's kind of just me throwing spaghetti at the wall or whatever. In fact, almost to a fault, because I think that there can actually be competing impulses there. One is to say that, you don't want to let anything go until it's perfect. And the other is to say, I'm going to throw stuff out there that's half-formed and half-assed. And that way, if it sucks, I don't have to feel like, well, I worked too hard on it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's maybe a deeper insight that I'll have to interrogate a little more. In any case, let me just finish with the thing that I finished with last night, which is, again, feels like a very non sequitur sort of change here, but which is just to say, I'm really liking the new Critical Role cartoon, Legend of Vox Machina. I mean, I'm a big fan of Critical Role, have been for a long time. I watched the original campaign, so it's, to me, it feels sort of obvious that I would be into it, and so I can't necessarily speak to people who are new to it. But what I'll say is, I thought that the first episode started off a little bit rough. It felt a little bit too much like forced edginess. Um, but I feel like it got better really fast after that. And I think that the show ends up feeling with the like the horror elements and violence elements feel a little bit more concentrated. Like they're there in the long form, like, you know, the original, you know, campaign streams, but they're more spread out and they're not paced in quite the same way. They don't feel as visceral because it's still all abstracted. You know, we're hearing it described, but we're still seeing people playing the characters as opposed to having all of these actions actually depicted in a much more time compressed way by comparison. And so it ends up the show feeling like it leans more heavily into those moments than the campaign stream did, but it's still a great story and I'm really liking it. So I don't know, this is a strong recommendation for me for the Legend of Vox Machina. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and finish this and I'll excuse me, talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.